Hi, I'm Dave Miller, and I'm the Director of College Counseling at Stevenson School in Pebble Beach, California. And I'd like to welcome you to the segment this year of a program we call College Prep for You. We're in our second year of a program that's designed to provide information and give you lots of things to think about as juniors and seniors go through this journey of applying to schools, finding out about schools, and then finally gaining admission. So far this year, we've had a broad overview of the school year. We've basically bounced back and forth between juniors and seniors, trying to stay on top of what they're particularly doing at that point. We've had a panel at our college chapel our school chapel with a variety of college admissions officers being asked questions by our students. We've talked about financial aid, we've talked about recommendations, the interview, the actual application process itself. Just recently we've talked about the gap year, visiting colleges with the college tours, a variety of things that will give our viewers some things to think about in this process. Today, we're lucky to have a big panel. We're on a little different format today. We have 3 adults and 2 students, and then one special guest. We're going to try to provide, through some questions and answers, a little insight about, really some hindsight about what maybe went wrong and what can go right with this process right from the horse's mouth. We've got some counselors here, some parents, and some students. So let's get started right away and meet our guests. And I guess we'll start with age before youth here. Janet, we'll start with beauty before the beast as well. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're in this process now.
All right. I taught English at Stevenson School for 11 years in the 80s, and then tutored part-time while raising my 2 sons. One of them is 21 years old and in college at Colorado College, and the other is a senior at Stevenson. And so I've gone through the process with other students as an English teacher and did a little college counseling, but then later with my own sons. And it's been quite an odyssey.
So a little bit of experience there with you. Bill? Excuse me, this is Bill Hankinson, Janet Thayer, and Dr. Chris Gonzalez. Get a little slide, maybe cut to that and see it back so we know who we're talking to. Bill.
I've been at Stevenson now a little over 30 years. One of the college counselors. I teach English full-time. I also do a little coaching. I have 3 children. They all of them went to Stevenson, and then they all went to college. And looking back on it, my oldest daughter went to UCLA, and we had to do an appeal, and that was an interesting process. So never give up hope. That's my feeling about it. And then my son went to Cal Poly, and my youngest daughter went to the University of Denver out of state. So 3 very different schools. So that was an interesting experience.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Chris Gonzalez.
Hi. I have a son who's a senior, Joseph, at Stevenson School, and a daughter that's a sophomore. So I've kind of gone through the college admission gristmill this year, and Dave's been a big help.
Okay, so you're sort of new at this because you've got your oldest son going in it, but you've been sort of a college junkie for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed the whole process. I've studied colleges on and off since I was in high school. Not that I was a good high school student, but I've enjoyed the process, and it's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, you definitely have a distinct perspective for us. Well, let's meet our students here, since they're right in the midst of all this thing, starting down here with Moya Maps. Moya, what can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing at Stevenson?
Oh, I'm a senior at Stevenson right now, so I'm just finishing out my college application process.
What are you involved with outside of class?
Last year I did a semester abroad. I spent 5 months in France, so that was an awesome experience. I'm also doing some singing, like choir and stuff, and theater. I'm in the spring play, and I'm helping to lead the Gay Straight Alliance.
Okay. I won't embarrass you by asking you for your numbers, GPA and class rank and SATs, but just trust me, I have a penchant for bringing absolutely wonderful students over here, so I apologize. These 2 students are not our average students. I wish they were. I wish we had average students like them, but they're the cream of the crop for us. Do you mind telling us where all you've applied and how you've done?
Oh yeah, I applied to Reed College in Santa Barbara and Stanford, Brown, and Princeton. I got rejected from Princeton, but I got in everywhere else.
So you're going to have some choices to make then. Okay, Joey, how about you? How are you? You've been on this program before,
I
so
have
you
been.
might recognize Joey. How's your college process going?
It's been pretty fantastic. I applied to about 9 schools.
It's about the average.
Yes. Got into 7. Stanford, Claremont McKenna, Duke, UCLA, San Diego, Davis. I'm probably forgetting one. And then I got waitlisted at Harvard and Columbia.
Okay.
So not all good news, but
Pretty good, though.
Pretty good.
news. Now, we also have a special guest, a little tweener guy. He was in our class. We had him in class, 6, 7 years ago. Bill taught him English, and I was his college counselor, and we all tried to keep up with him with golf. He was a great CCS golfer while in high school, and he got a golf scholarship to Stanford. So he's got some interesting perspective just being out as a young adult. On his own, still in touch with school a little bit, but he wanted to share some of his experiences with us. So I think we can profit a great deal from Kyle Gentry. What can you add to that?
I was a decent golfer. Wasn't good enough to make any money off of it. So going to college is very, very important. And I definitely enjoyed my experiences both in high school and college. But the experience of getting in and getting the most out of college is very, very important. Something I learned about sophomore year in college.
And in talking with you, I've sort of gotten the feel that you're much more serious about college and the intellect, the mind, the whole process, academics, than you were maybe when you were 16.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
No big surprise
Yep,
there.
absolutely.
Okay, well, let's get started on our discussion, finding out what we can uncover. And we've got a new real agenda here, but we want to find out some things that maybe we can share that are both pieces of good advice, what to do and maybe what to avoid. And let's start with choosing college is maybe what the most important thing you do. Let's start with Moya. How'd you go about crafting your list?
I've got kind of a diverse list of colleges I was looking at, but I think for different reasons they were all really good fits for me. And it was mostly through friends and family who had gone there and suggested places to me. Like a lot of my dad's family went to Reed, and my grandparents went to Stanford. So.
Mm-hmm. Any place on your list that was a surprise that you didn't think about beforehand that just sort of ended up there?
Yeah, Princeton was kind of a last-minute choice. I mean, it's a great school, so it seemed like a reasonable place to apply, but I didn't have as much of a connection.
Okay, what's a piece of advice you could give people for if they're going to go about this as juniors now? How do they pick their schools?
I think that it's definitely really important to go visit campuses. You can get a good sense for if it's a good fit for you or not.
Okay.
So go and visit as many places as you can.
Okay, Joey, how about you? How'd you craft your list?
I actually ended up having a very eclectic list. I had a wide spectrum of schools, some in the city, some fairly rural, large schools, small schools. And so for me, the schools that I applied to, I visited most. I didn't visit Duke, but they were all, I sort of had this visceral reaction to them. I felt like I could spend 4 years there.
Your kind of place.
Yes, exactly. And so going off of what Moya said, definitely if you can, go and visit the school that you plan to apply to. And then talk with some people. You sort of you find out more about the school by talking with the people who have been there, who've gone through the school, who were there at the time. And that would be my one piece of advice.
Good. Can you remember when you were crafting your list? Partially it was driven by the golf.
Yeah, my experience was a little bit different because the application process was different. I was being recruited. I wanted to find a place that balanced both academics and golf, but also, I'd always wanted to go to Stanford. So it was my list wasn't very long necessarily.
Yeah. Sort of remember UCLA was in there, right?
UCLA was in the mix. My father went there, so he was definitely making the pitch from time to time. But I think what was interesting is I was trying to think about it when I was driving here today, and while it was different to the extent of I wanted to find a school that had golf as, there was an important part to it, it's not unlike, kind of students coming out today trying to find a university that fits for a particular subject that they're interested in. I would, when I graduated, most of the seniors that I was friends with didn't choose a college based upon, hey, they had a good, physics department or math department, or there was something about it they really liked in terms of the academics. I have a sense that today, in order to get into some of the universities that kids are trying to get into, having a focus of what you want to study and look at, doesn't have to be what you want to do long term, is definitely something that's important, I would think.
Okay. Let's turn to the parents here and the teachers and the counselors. What thoughts do you have about any good advice for picking colleges, Janet?
Well, it is helpful to get advice. I know my son's received good advice from teachers, college counselors, and your department in crafting a list that had the reach schools, the ones you're likely to get into, just a variety, so that you aren't banking on one or two and setting yourself up for great disappointment.
Exactly.
It's not predictable. Even though everyone in a school can say, oh, you're definitely going to get in, all that means is they think that you're in the pool that could handle the work, but it doesn't mean you'll get in. So it's important to not rely too much on people's predictions. So you do need a real variety, I think. And also then that gives you some time to figure out what you really want, because in September and October of your senior year, most students still really don't have much of an idea of the kind of college they want to go to. So it's good to leave some choices. I don't know that 20 or 30 different schools to apply to would be advisable, but a range.
Yeah. Bill, you got any nuggets for us about picking schools?
About selecting schools, I think that what I tell most of my students right away is it's not nearly as stressful as it needs to be. So the first thing you have to do is just relax, find an area where you want to be, and then make sure that they have the kinds of programs that you want to be, you want to take. I know with my oldest daughter, we had to appeal. She got into UCLA. So she had to really work at it. She had to be very patient with it. And I think that's important. Keep that in mind, that you might have a place that you really want to gain admission to, and it might take a while for that to work, to come to fruition. My youngest daughter, she wanted to go to LMU originally, and I was hoping that she'd be able to go to Denver, University of Denver, and eventually that's where she went. Originally, she was not very happy about it. She went there, she visited, and she came back and said, "Oh, I don't know whether I would like it there." We called her after a week of her freshman year, and she absolutely loved it, and she's thrilled. She still lives in Denver.
Yeah, it's probably the best piece of advice altogether. Things work out, and she's going to marry somebody that would maybe not have happened had she not been there.
Right, it definitely would not have happened.
Okay, Chris, respond to that. If Bill's saying, be controlled, be relaxed, tone everything down, you as a parent who's really involved in this, and it's a big deal for you, how do you deal with that?
Well, I can be kind of a helicopter overbearing parent, right, Joe? That being said, I think your role as the adult is to offer an adult perspective. I've always been a college junkie, so I think as a parent in conjunction with the college counselor, you know your kid, you try to help them make good decisions and offer them an adult perspective, perhaps something that is not reasonably in their frame of reference as a senior. And knowing your kid's numbers, working with the counselor, I think you can start to craft a list of possible schools, whether your kid is the Uber student or maybe a kid who perhaps is in the lower half of the class. There are still a zillion great schools out there. So the adult perspective, knowing your kid, I think, Colin, your point was really right on the money. Encourage your kid to figure out what it is that interests them, from a mature perspective, in terms of what they could study or focus in on in college, and that would help guide the choice of a college.
Let me give this to Moya and Joey here. You guys saw lots of parents through your friends, other seniors, parents who did nothing, parents who were real attack helicopter parents. What would you tell those parents if you could, face to face? Not that you will, but what would you tell them?
Back off.
Well, as my dad was saying, he was a bit involved. To be honest, though, I didn't take advantage of his involvement until a bit later on in the game. He was very good about helping me research schools, look for scholarships, and I didn't take advantage of that early enough. So parents who do, I think that they really just want to help their child in the long run, even though the child might resent it at the time.
Yeah.
But that's what I would say.
Well, let's jump to the application process itself. Another thing that's, we do a whole program on that. I do simple, full workshops on these, but just to pick up some things in advance for those juniors that are going to anticipate their fall process. I remember, Kyle, your process was responding to some recruiters and, going the Stanford route that way, but you also went through the UC system. Did you apply to some other schools, some other private schools?
No, I had narrowed it down, the list of what I wanted to look at, and then ultimately it all hinged upon whether or not I got into Stanford academically. Once I did, that was the only application I did.
Yeah, so it's pretty streamlined if you're in that route. If you're a recruited athlete, if you really know where you want to go.
Right.
How about over here, working with students or working with your own kids, or just giving advice on campus, doing workshops and things? What are the most important things to point out in terms of actually doing the application process that can help streamline things and make it efficient for them?
I think narrow the list down to about 9 or 10 schools.
Yeah.
That's what I suggest, because some, they'll come in and they have a list of like 20 or 25 places. So, and when I'm working with someone, I want to identify what size, what location do you want to be in, what field of study, and with about probably 80 or 90%, you don't know what you want to do. I mean, Joey, you may have an idea, but Moya, do you know what field of study you want to go into at this point?
Oh, I thought I did, but less and less I'm realizing there's a lot of different things I'd like to explore, so not yet.
So you want a school that has a variety of offerings so that you've got wider choices.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. You kind of sit down with a student and you go, what kinds of places do you want to look at? And, most colleges will offer a variety of programs. Certainly Stanford does. But, Denver has a great business school, but they also have a really good music school. There are lots of different things. Do you want to be in a city? And with a lot of our students that live on the peninsula, I think they want to be where there's some place where they can find, some fun things to do, and, they want to enjoy city life. Or some of our students just go, I want to go where I can be involved in going hiking, where I can go skiing. I have a lot of different kinds of contacts.
So you're talking basically research, knowing what you're getting into and narrowing the list that way. Plus, it's much more efficient. If you're not doing 20 schools like many of our students do, then you can be much more pointed. Now, how about the actual paperwork itself, all those steps and process? I know it sounds daunting, but what can you respond to about that? Like, how tough was it to get all this paperwork done?
There was a lot of busy work. I can definitely say that. The UC system definitely makes it a bit easier, though. You apply once and just click it, check a couple of boxes. Same thing with the Common App. Most schools have, I say most schools as if I know, but a lot of my schools have used the Common App. And so from that, I only have to fill out a supplement for each individual school. So that was pretty efficient.
Yeah, it's well over 300 schools do the Common App.
And then for my college essays, I could actually use one for a specific school, and then for another, the prompt would be similar enough that I could tweak my essay a little bit, so that cut down on.
Yeah, so you can massage that essay a little bit, and it can serve several places. Did you do that, Kyle? Do you remember your essay at all?
Yeah, I do remember the essay. The most important part that I gleaned from the essay process is, everyone has the amazing story. People spend a lot of time on the theme itself. The absolute must is to make sure that it is structurally sound, the punctuation's in the right place, and the spelling is good.
Yeah, that's
no matter how great the story is, one little hiccup there, it sets the tone for the rest of it. So, obviously the storyline's important, but really make sure that you have spent a lot of time to make sure that the details are correct.
And what did you talk about in your essay? I can't remember.
I talked about, I think, the passing of a teacher that I had when I was a lot younger.
Interesting. Joe, do you remember yours?
I do. I talked about rock climbing with my dad when we climbed Half Dome over the summer.
Okay, so it's going to say something about you, relationship with your dad. You're an
Yes.
outdoor guy. Hopefully, you're a good writer, and maybe you had some little funny things going back and forth, about your dad, and leading to a little breakaway. You get some independence.
Yes.
That's what schools
Yes.
like to see.
Something
Those sorts of things. Did you read his essay?
No.
Didn't. Okay, that's interesting. I never read my sons or daughters either until years later, and then maybe that's a good tip. Moya, what was yours about?
Oh, I wrote about my AFS experience, my time abroad last year.
Yeah, you were abroad last year, and what does that say about you?
Oh, it was I learned a lot about myself, living away from my family and experiencing a new culture and stuff.
Yeah, very independent, risk taker, unique, don't need to go with the flow, and the schools you picked sort of reflect that. That's Reed all over the place, and Brown. So they like to see that. So a little tip, I guess, would be make sure that the application process resonates with who you are, and also is complementary of the schools you're applying to. Really good tip if you can do it. Any last thoughts on specific things they can use? Janet, like you helped out two sons with applications.
Well, this is rather technical, but it helped a lot. My husband kept a running resume of both boys through their high school years, and it's something you could begin even as a junior if that's where you are. But just writing down what they did and using very active verbs to describe what they did. If they really organized something, if they really originated an idea, if they served, rather than just say the name of an office or captain, team captain, say what they did. Because you think you're going to remember all these things, and you don't. And at the time, filling out the application, it's so nice to have a master resume to pull those things off of. It also gives you ideas for some really authentic, insightful essays, because you've listed so many things that you've done. You can maybe even see a theme in your life.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we give these kids a lot of this busy work. We force our kids to have this resume, and they turn it in as an English assignment, so it's right there. Well, that's the thing parents can do also. They can help remember all those things. Like we started one in 8th grade for our kids, and it's right there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you can keep it and expand with it. So that's a pretty good idea. Another good thing, while you're doing these hikes with your dad or you're overseas in France, you keep that journal, and just like a president in office is going to write his memoirs, you're going to write about that experience. And you use these good active good English tips, good English papers, organized. It's got a great opening, an imperative close, and you want to use those sorts of things. Okay, let's jump to something that's maybe distasteful for us. We've got to talk about them, is standardized tests. Anybody want to make some comments about that thing that we love to hate? Standardized testing, SAT 1s and 2s and all those things. Bill?
Well, I'll talk about, I have a college counselee who's sitting at the table that worked at raising his SAT scores. And Joey, you raised yours rather significantly.
I did by 220 points.
Mm-hmm. It was over 200.
Yes.
And how did you do that?
Well, I took the SAT 3 times. The first time I got a 2140, and then I had a private tutor for about a month, took the SAT again. Oddly enough, I scored lower the second time, and then just took it upon myself to beat myself up a little, take a bit more time to study and prepare, and finally pulled out a 2360.
Yeah, which is, he missed very few questions. Now, this is something you don't have to do, and we don't want to foist this upon people and put pressure where there's already too much pressure, but it's all a function of your ambition. Like if you want to get into brand X, Y, and Z, then you've got to jump through their hoops. How many times do you take the test, Moya?
I just took it twice.
Just twice. Well, that's probably about normal, and after that, I don't know if there's any history of how much more you go up. My kids took it three times, and the last time they took it, each one of them popped up like 150 plus points on just the 2 scores. So it has to do with being relaxed and in control of things, knowing the test. The tutoring can help. And I remember your story. You were sort of stuck like my kids were at a certain point, and then not quite what Stanford wanted, as I remember, and then you took the ACT.
Yeah, that was going to be my point. I think enough people got frustrated with the standardized tests, and the beauty of it was they came out with the ACT, something that's a little bit different branded, and most of the people complain about the SAT being I don't take standardized tests well, I just don't. Well, okay, you really should then start expanding and taking the ACT. I took it. It was night and day difference.
Yeah.
And I didn't learn much over the 2-month span between the two tests. So
But it was a test that fit your learning style.
yeah, it's just kind of the way I think. So it was, I would recommend not only pushing yourself to improve your scores. The first score isn't great for the SAT, but also take the ACT. Start
Yeah.
taking some of the other standardized tests that are out there.
Yeah, and more of our kids are doing that. Now, did you do any prep work at all?
I did a lot of prep work.
Okay, and Moya, did you do prep work?
Yeah.
You did. Okay, so it sounds like that's the thing to do. Again, we're talking about some ambitious students trying to get into the brass ring schools, and boy, you're competing against other kids who are just naturally gifted, and you got to play the game, man. Any contrary thoughts about standardized testing?
Well, I had a student a number of years ago that really struggled with the SAT, and he wanted to earn a basketball scholarship. He was one of my players, and he just couldn't hit that 780 or 720 mark. I forget what it was. I mean, here was a student that, he did fairly well academically, a wonderful basketball player, and yet he couldn't get over 580, 620 on the SAT. And so what we did was we just sat down and we mapped out a strategy together, and he worked with another teacher until he took the test maybe 5 or 6 times. So once again, persistence pays off.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do particularly well the first time you take the test, look at the test and figure out what you need to do in order to improve. And finally, what we told him, we just suggested don't answer any question unless you're pretty confident of what the answer is.
Mm-hmm.
And so the rest of them, he just left blank. And he worked on it and worked on it. He took it 4 or 5 times until finally he got a passing score. Went to college, now he's a very, very successful young man down
And
there.
I'm guessing nobody asked him what his scores were. these
And
days.
nobody cares what your SAT scores are.
Yeah, most of the time
They
people
don't
aren't going to ask you where you went to college. They won't ask you for your degree. They just want to know what kind of person you are and what you can do. So we want to keep that perspective. But I think that's a good point Bill made and Kyle demonstrated. The difference between the SAT and the ACT is your learning style, how you know things, and it's also that the strategy of the test, how it's designed. One of the tests you get nailed for wrong questions or wrong answers. Another of the tests you do not. So you need to figure out which test fits you in terms of strategy and content and the type of learner you are. So it's not a bad thing to do some practice tests like that, to see what they're both like, and also to do a learning inventory to find out what kind of learner you are that will address the GPA that you're creating. You need to go to a school, classes, seek out teachers that sort of fit your learning style. Not that that's realistic and you're not going to do that all of your life. You may not have a chance in college, but it's always good to know your strengths and weaknesses as a learner. Okay, let's jump over and talk about the non-academic side of things. And Jana, we'll start with you because you had 2 wonderful kids who did a variety of things on top of being good students. Co-curriculars, how important are they and what should kids do? Give us some guidelines.
Well, as a parent, I have always encouraged my boys to pursue their interests from the time they were very young. And that's to help them become people interested in life and the world. And that was sort of independent of any thought of college.
Good.
And I cringe when I think of people saying, oh, you need to do this, you need to sign up that, you need to be president of this club just to get into a college. It's so artificial, and if it's not a part of who you are, it's just not going to work. You might end up getting into the college you thought you wanted to go to, but then you're going to sit back and wonder what next. I think it's really important to, as they say, pursue passions. That's become a cliche almost in the world of college admissions, but it is very true. Finding them can be a challenge for some people, but it's something you need to pursue just to be happy living, I think. Mm-hmm. And my sons pursued their different passions. They both love the out of doors, backpacking, that sort of thing, but they've taken them off in different directions. Drew's very happy at Colorado College, where he's found a large population of people who love climbing, mountain biking, and backpacking, and he's found that because he's developed those passions and he's become more and more proficient in them, and even in college, they have a fund to help people take courses in self-rescue and climbing and various things because they want trained people running the outdoor programs, that this has just become an integral part of him and of his college experience. And he's better able to sit down and hit the books because he's also fulfilled
Yeah,
in his
so
love of out of doors and read the same way. He's just pursued his interests through scouting in the out of doors and the expedition at school, the wilderness, and all. And because they've pursued those, it has just been a natural outflowing of who they are, and also they've developed persistence and depth. And that's something that you just carry on into life, into your college work as well as your adult life. And so I would just encourage you to really look for authentically what is you, not just what you think some college would be impressed
Exactly.
by. Because whatever it is, they're looking for persistence, intensity, passion, and depth. They don't care whether it's collecting butterflies or playing tiddlywinks or what it is, but it's the passion.
Yeah, and do something and do it well, do it for a long time, and be the real you.
Yes.
That's really good advice. Now, what I like about your son, and I think it offers a lesson here, your older son walked away from a brand name, prestigious place. Williams is one of the hardest places to get into, and all these wonderful students go there. But he felt, geez, it's really not for me. And he went to another really good place, but it's not a Williams. But it fit him, and he's so confident in himself that he can do that, and that's a real rare kid. Now, he was a sophomore, I guess, when he did. He also took a gap year. He went to South America and did some things. So that takes a really strong person, just like Moya was when she did that in high school. Now, we have three distinct, different people here. You were wrapped up in golf. I mean, you have to be at that level, Division I level. You've got to dedicate your life to that. Moya, you were sort of off the beaten path. Like, how would you describe yourself? Pretty independent.
Yeah,
Took a
that's a good
risk.
way to put it.
Are you a loner? Did we say you're a loner?
I guess you could say that, yeah. A little bit. But, I'm not afraid to follow my own path and see.
And she did it in a way that, and I can share this with you because I was her counselor and I wrote about her, she did it in a way that's not splashy. A lot of people didn't know about it, and that's why she's the hidden gem that colleges like to find and unfold. Like, she went to Europe on her own. She sort of browbeat her family that she was living with in France to drive her to take the SATs hundreds of miles. She taught herself piano while she was over there. She also taught herself some calculus so she could be ready to come back here. Now, those are the sorts of things that are not big and splashy like a Division I golfer or, an Eagle Scout and these sorts of things, but they're really terribly important for colleges because they know we're going to have somebody that's going to make things happen on our campus. Joey, you're still even a different story. You were so strong on the one side, and your dad and I talked a little bit on the other side about, well, geez, what's the deal with Harvard? Why didn't he get into Harvard?
Right.
And what did we decide, maybe?
It was probably a weakness on my activities.
Probably, yeah. And so does that matter? Would you do anything different now that you know things?
No, I did things that I enjoyed. I'm a rock climber, so I climb. I'm captain this year. I volunteer at the local hospital because someday I hope to be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm involved in the school as much as I care to be. I love the school, so I try and spend as much time as I can there, but I can't just bend over backwards and kill myself to be at school every waking minute. No, I wouldn't do anything differently.
So you were doing who you wanted to be.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Okay, Dad, how about you? The ball's in your court. How'd you think about that?
Well, he makes a very rational argument for his approach. I liked what Janet had to say. When I interact now with adults, it really ultimately is their personality and their sincere interest in what they're doing as opposed to their GPA and their SATs that are of no consequence at this point.
Yep.
So I guess I'm of two minds. I think your activities do reflect more of who you are and are more reflective of what is going to be your long-term success than your grades and SAT scores. But so I don't really have any profound insight into
Okay.
it.
All right, let's touch on this just because some of our viewers might be interested in this. What is the role that your counselor, your advisor, your mentor, the go-to person played for you? Just take a crack at that, Moya.
Well, obviously you're my college counselor. And you
Yeah, I did the nuts and bolts things, but anybody else that really was pivotal with you?
I also got some input from my family. Like, my brother was the one who suggested that Brown would be a good place for me. And then I was able to fly out and stay with him while I visited schools on the East Coast.
Okay, and they're academics, so they gave a
Yeah.
pretty good influence. Joey, how about you?
Well, Mr. Hankerson was my college counselor, and he was fantastic. I dare say I wouldn't have been as successful in my college approach without him, and my dad as well. And they definitely they kept me calm. They had a very rational approach to the college process, and without that, I think I would have been a bit over my head.
Mhm.
So, thank you both.
And I remember, Kyle, I worked with you a little bit, and we were sort of working with your dad a lot, too. He was a pretty driving force, and your mom, as I remember.
I was going to say, I made the job, tried to make the job as easy as I could on you, but
Yeah.
because a lot of it had to do with the scores on the golf course. But yeah, I mean, there was, I think, to the last point, I kind of want to go back just real quick, but it actually speaks to this, is finding the passion. I mean, it is cliche to say, but that's the reality of it, is finding the passion early on is incredibly important. I think, the roles of activities in that is important. So, if you're obviously juniors and seniors, this isn't going to resonate with them quite so much, but, some of the younger folks that are watching the show or parents of younger folks, school can't be cool when you're, in sixth grade, seventh
Right.
grade. It just can't, right? So, finding something that's outside of school that you can latch onto and enjoy and develop, doesn't matter what it is, important. You figure out what it is that you like, and all these other processes we've been talking about, like the difficulties of going to the ACTs, the SATs, all these classes, the applications, figuring out which colleges, so on and so forth, kind of disappear. You figure out, this is what I want to do, and this may not be what I want to do long term, but this is what I enjoy doing, and that's going to define what I'm going to look for. That's going to define how passionate I am to take these tests again, because you know what, this is what it requires for me to go here, or this is what I care about for these schools because they have these programs. And for me, it happened to be golf. I wanted to play golf at Stanford, and I was going to do whatever it took to get there. But for someone else, it can be other colleges. I mean, it's finding that passion early on. I think activities is a great way to do that when you're younger, and no reason to stop when you're a junior or senior.
Unfortunately, I think everything you said is correct. Unfortunately, you're the exception. And most kids are struggling with being 16.
Yeah.
And they haven't been driven by this, by whatever it drives them. That's why they go to school, to find those things. And that's okay. I think, Janet, your kids found them a little early on, and maybe not to the extent that golf served for Kyle, but it's a little easier that way. I had a son who found his. My daughter still may be looking around for hers, but you just have to go with what is. And maybe a mentor, a counselor, a teacher can help out with that. So a little related subject here is who do you get to write for you? Bill and I write both as teacher letters and college counselor letters, but who did you guys get to write for you? Moya?
Oh, I had my math teacher. He taught me freshman year too, so that was one of the main reasons I picked him. And then my English teacher too.
Okay. Anybody outside those three or those two?
And the college counselor letter,
Yeah.
but that's it.
So you had the three then?
Yeah.
Okay. And Joey?
I actually had, gosh, I'm trying to think now. I had one of my math teachers from last year, Mr. Sanuda, who, his class was arguably one of my most difficult. I definitely did not earn an A in that class. And so I thought that his letter would be a more appropriate representation of what my own worth ethic is, how I am as a student, beside just the straight up A student. I also had our Dean of Students at the moment, Eric Olson, write one of my letters to Columbia, because he's my rock climbing coach. He knows me on a couple of fields. So.
Okay. Bill, you do both the teacher letter and the college counseling letter. Give us a perspective on that. What are you trying to do as a teacher? What are you trying to do for that student so that he gets into the school that he wants when you're writing the teacher letter?
Well, I think as someone who writes a letter, it's a little bit of a two-edged sword. I talk to the students, and I'm willing to write, for anyone that I have, but I want to make sure that what I write, I'm trying to select 3 or 4 things that I think every student does well, or that particular student does well. And so I'm going to emphasize those. And then I talk a lot about character. To me, that's very important. And I think the colleges, they want to learn that. They want to gain a sense of who the person is. And if you're in my class, I'm going to know who you are and what you do, just because that's kind of who I am. I like to make contact with my students, so we have a connection. And then I really try to emphasize I knew Kyle. I knew his parents very well. I knew, I love golf, and so I could talk about that. And with Joey, whether it's rock climbing or his interest in medicine, or just he's got very eclectic interest in things. So that was one of the things that I talked about.
So you're trying to capture things that are pretty mercurial. You can't measure them or weigh them, but it's there when you see it. Character, integrity, those sorts of things.
Right.
And I think you and I talked about that when part of your little fascination with college is you've talked to some of your interns, some of the young doctors you're working with, and what do you find out?
I've yet to figure out a pattern in terms of where they go to school. So ultimately, even though I'm a college junkie, I really don't believe the decision is really all that important as to the specific place you end up. It is funny, though. It is the integrity, the work ethic, and the passion that you bring to your job that ultimately determines everything. I think, Kyle, you're very fortunate to have found something that is so consuming at an early age. I think with you, Joe, perhaps my failing as a parent was I didn't introduce you to maybe enough activities. Maybe I didn't give you a certain guidance or perspective in terms of developing some sort of passion. But I suppose ultimately that comes from within, anyways. So.
And I don't want to say that obviously you have to be all consumed in one particular thing, but I think one of the things that I don't like about the SAT is that it forces students to be, let's define what it's going to take to get into these universities, and let's back up, and this is what you need to be. And yeah, you're really great at science, but we need to up your math scores. And from my perspective, and again, I'm biased myself, but I think you should keep focusing on your science. I mean, yes, you need to focus on math, and yes, there are certain requirements you need to have to get into the universities you want to get into, but just because you're good at something doesn't mean, I need to focus, focusing on your weaknesses is important, but I feel like colleges these days are separating students based upon what can you bring to the class. You're a student, great. I mean, it used to be you fit these criteria, you come in. Now there's so many people, it's what do you bring to the class? Like, what can you bring to me? And, just reaching certain levels and you're a well-rounded student, that's great, but you have these experience doing these things in the summer, or you had these activities in science, you're going to add something to the class that the instructor is not going to be able to add, and I think that's something that I feel like they're starting to look for. I could be wrong.
Well, I think you've captured the landscape of the college setting these days, and because they're in the driver's seat, they can define what they want, and they get what they want. And that would leave people like Bill and me out in the cold. We couldn't get into the schools where we went years ago because we were sort of generalists. We still are. I don't think there's anything we can hang our hat on that says, hey, we're great at this, we're great at that. But we were pretty good in a variety of things. Little leadership, little athletics, little this, little that. Whereas today, they want to get this mosaic. They want the great golfer. They want the great independent person taking risks. They want the great scores. They want a rock climber. They want all these things. They want the shortstop. They want all this stuff because they want this fascinating freshman class to build. And that's maybe not how we are. We lose the development of other things. What I think I'm hearing you say is, take me, this is who I am, and find a school that will fit who you are, where you can maybe grow also, but you don't want to be twisted into a square shape to get into that round hole. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yeah. My thing is, because it's a sport, the goal is to get as good as you possibly can be in it. Mm-hmm. So, all the sort of limitations set on that disappear, where in the academic field or in school and you're growing up, science, your grades are A's. Okay, let's focus on other things where your grades aren't. You've reached the top.
Yeah.
Where and my point is, you obviously may need to raise your math scores, whatever the case may be. But if you really love science, there's things beyond A's. I mean, keep focusing on that and keep trying to do things outside of school.
Because that's what you do the rest of your life.
Exactly. I mean, that's
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, ultimately, I think that again, and I'm just repeating what everyone said. Ultimately, that passion is what drives the rest of your career. I think, unfortunately, for those top-tier schools, and you've said it, Dave, they have a pile of applications. They're looking for reasons to get rid of you. And so at that point, unfortunately, the process, when the numbers are so stacked against an individual student, it becomes the golf score. The SAT is now the golf score. And if you don't have that score, you're out. So it's a given you're going to have, unfortunately. You have to have great grades great SATs, and then pile on the it's a sick process, but
Yeah.
it is what it
Bill?
is.
I wanted to make a comment about a mentor because I came from an area where hardly anyone went to college in my high school. I didn't have any money to even start college except what I earned over the summer. And I was not even sure that I was going to apply to any place. I grew up in Ohio except Ohio State. And one of my teachers and coaches in football said, look, I went to this small Methodist school. They have a really good football program, but they have a very good academic program. I'm going to take you up there, and to help you with the college process, you can wash and wax my car to earn the application fee. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
So when I look at what has motivated me, probably for my entire life, it was that one particular moment with that one particular teacher.
Yeah.
And I said, what better job can you have than to be a teacher? So find a mentor, find someone that is in your community, somebody that can help motivate you to do something to take you to a different level. And it doesn't have to be, I didn't have great scores, I didn't have great grades. But once I got into college, I said, God, what a great place this is.
Yeah, exactly. What's not
I
to
was
like?
so excited. How could you not love what you're doing here?
Yeah, I thought you and I had some things in common. I've been doing it on a lifelong tirade to get back and pay back the guy who helped me to be sitting right where I am, and met my wife in California, all those things, because he got me into school, and I wouldn't have been into the place that I went to without him. Okay, we want to put a little closure on this Love Fest by thinking about, very quickly, we're just going to do a little round-robin thing, and just one word, what's the best thing about this process? Just think about it. What's the best thing about this whole process, and then what's the worst thing about this process? Janet, your report. What's the best thing about it?
Best thing is discovering who your young person is becoming, because that's still a process.
Okay, good. Bill?
Okay.
Diversity. There are many, many, many schools, I think, where you can apply and you can attend and absolutely love it. My daughter went to Denver, and every time we turn around, somebody's a graduate of Denver, and they are so enthusiastic about it.
Chris?
It has nothing to do with really getting in, but as a parent, it's been really enjoyable to watch my son grow through the process.
Yeah. You did a good job. Kyle?
You have to look beyond one weekend as a kid. I mean, typically you're looking at one weekend. This forces you to look at 4 years, and that's maybe the first time you do it.
Good. Joy?
I'd say seeing the results, finding out where I'm going, and then also seeing the people that I've grown up around, people I've spent 4 years of school with, where they're going and the direction their lives are taking.
Good. William?
It's just kind of exciting to be making your own decisions and figuring out what you're going to do with the rest of your life.
Okay, good. Well, I think I was going to ask you for the worst thing also, but I don't want to stop on a negative note here. I would just want to, and maybe we can show this on the screen. I cut out some things I got from prior years, some ideas I got from some parents. I wish I'd helped my kid focus on what truly matters instead of being caught up on the Ivy thing. I wish I'd known how to start the process sooner. I wish I'd relaxed and taken a softer approach to this whole process. This could be a parent or a kid. If you're not sure, don't worry about applying early. Tailor your essay to serve several things. Joey said that. And then plan your strategy. Know your strengths and weaknesses. Consider a gap year. I wish I'd listened to you. That's my favorite one. You guys should listen to your college counselors. And then here's the most important one. It all works out in the end. And my child is so happy at school brand X. And that's how it's going to be. You're going to end up liking where you were. Okay, well, this is Dave Miller, and I want to thank our panel here for joining us, both the adults and the students. And I wanted to thank our viewers, the parents and students who've joined us each week. And we'd like to invite you back at the end of the month, April 28th, I believe it is. We're going to talk about the college essay and the role that plays, a really pivotal role. We've touched on it here, but we're going to have a real specific hour-long session on the college essay. And I'd like to close with my normal mantra here. It is never too early to start thinking about college, and it's never too late to start acting on it. This is Dave Miller. Thank you for being with us, joining us next week. And this is wishing you good luck on your adventure in finding the right school for you. Have a good day.